BMW safety car peels its way into the pit lane. 30 minutes rather, are on the clock, and we're about to get our second race of the day underway for the GT Cup Championship. Dan Dazil at the wheel of the Group GTC Ferrari leads the charge up towards Old Hall Corner, and it is going to be Simon Orange in second place, with Charlotte Gilbert sitting there in third place. Russ Lindsay tries to go all the way around the outside of the McLaren of Andre Borodin, but the Group GTC Porsche is outgunned rather by the GT3 McLaren as they head down through the Avenue and Dentons, but it's a Group GTC Ferrari that leads at the moment. Dan Dazil doing great things. Simon Orange in second place. Charlotte Gilbert, what a start from her as she sits there in third place, with Sasha Kakat in fourth place, and Simon Orange dives at the inside to pick up the lead of the race. Group GT3 McLaren goes through and ahead of Group GTC Ferrari, but for Dan Dazil, may as well do that because you're not going to lose any championship points. You probably always know you're going to get picked off by the slightly more powerful and better aerodynamically dependent GT3 cars, so let Simon Orange go. You're still leading your group at this stage, Dan Dazil, and that's what's important come the totting up at the end of the championship season. Charlotte Gilbert still sitting there in third position. Sasha Kakat completing the top four at this stage. Andre Borodin, followed by Russ Lindsay, and then it's Paul Bailey thereafter. And then leading Group GTH in the early stages, looks as though that's Tim Docker that leads Group GTH at the wheel of the McLaren Artura. So they feed their way through Druids and start to build the speed again. Paul Bailey looking to close in on the Porsche. The Lamborghini is a bit too far away. And then we get Tim Docker in the new McLaren Artura for this season, leading the batch of Group GTH cars, which also has the intermingling BMW of Chris Murphy amongst them as well. Can the Group GTO BMW in a straight line go through and past? One would have thought so, but no, for the moment Tim Docker is still ahead of the BMW, which has got four Group GTH cars queuing up behind it, including the car at the tail end of the field there, which is Phil Carter's machine, but he's got the two Make Happen Mercedes ahead of him, and then the Aston Martin in the hands of James Guess. So Charlotte Gilbert now has lost third position. Sasha Kakat has gone through to pick the place up. And now Charlotte Gilbert will still remain second in Group GTC, despite having lost the place. And even if Andre Borodin goes through at the wheel of the McLaren that lies behind, again, it would still be Charlotte Gilbert second in Group GTC because she's been picked off by the Group GT3 Audi. And at the moment, she's got another Group GT3 car behind her, which is the number 24 car, in the hands of Andre Borodin, who's having a good weekend, has shown good pace really, Andre Borodin, over the course of this weekend, and is starting to get quicker and quicker and quicker under the tutorage of Ed Peed, who he's racing with this weekend, and also Ollie Webb, who he's also raced with over the course of the 2023 championship season. So, up towards the braking area for Lodge Corner comes this squabble for what will be fourth and fifth position. The Top Cats Racing Lamborghini with the Greystone McLaren sitting behind it, the 720S GT3. Remember, the pit window will open that a little bit earlier. We're already 4 minutes into the race. It's only another 10 minutes and the pit window opens in reality, and you can argue because for most of the cars they've got pro drivers to share with, get the pro in quicker, but for some of them, the likes of John Curry, he's on his own, doesn't matter when he pits. The BMW of Chris Murphy is on its own, doesn't matter when he pits either. And also for the number 69 Make Happen Racing car, Stephen Walton and Chris Hart, well, they are a sporting combination, so two amateur drivers coming together. So again, in reality, it doesn't matter if you try and put a quicker driver in sooner, they are both of an equivalent pace, one would have thought. If anything, maybe Chris Hart slightly quicker, but again, it opens up the possibilities for them. So Greystone team looking on. They'll be hoping for a strong result in this one from their respective drivers, and poor old Rich Mason will be looking on. Now the two Make Happen Mercedes almost get themselves side by side. John Curry feeling the pressure here from Stephen Walton, but there's no way for him to thread his way through, because John Curry is bottled up behind James Guess and the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin, which lies second in Group GTH at the moment. But remember, that Aston Martin is lying second overall in the championship points, but can score full championship points, whereas Paul Bailey, the overall championship leader at the wheel of his Group GTO Lamborghini, is on reduced championship points, just 18 for the win he could pick up, whereas a win in Group GTH would see 25 championship points for whoever the winner of that one is. So the championship battle could close up here at the end of the totting up. Great fight it is, brilliant stuff. Second, third, fourth, fifth in Group GTH all together, vying over 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th positions as they head underneath the Warwick Bridge and up towards the braking area for Lodge once more. But it's still Aston Martin from the pair of Mercedes and then the slightly older McLaren 570S GT4 that Phil Carter shares with the pro driver Mikey Broadhurst. Now Dan Dazil in the Ferrari still leads Group GTC, but he's now been caught by the Audi that lies behind. So closing up all of the time is that Audi. Can the Cook Racing machine go through? Not for the moment, but the pressure is building a little bit. And how much does Dan Dazil do here to try and hold them up? Well, I would say he's got to press on still, really. Largely because, yes, he leads the group at the moment, but he is going to stop for about 4 seconds longer than Charlotte Gilbert will do at the wheel of the second in Group GTC placed Lamborghinis. Again, the two Make Happen Racing Mercedes, they almost brush off each other down the exit of the corner, so need to be careful that they don't make contact with each other. I think they did. I think there's a very, very light bit of damage to the number 69 car. Sure, I just saw, yeah, you can just see on that front right corner, is that a dive plane or is that a little indicator that's come out? There's definitely something on the front right-hand corner of the second of those two Mercedes that's now just not quite where it ought to be. This fight is 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th places all together. And again, can't quite see. There's definitely something there. Yeah, just sticking out that front right corner of that Mercedes. Now, if it is a little dive plane, that will just have an effect on the aero of the car. And that was just the lightest of brushes between the pair of them. But again, they're so close together, very difficult for our camera crew to try and get a clear picture as to exactly what it is. And again, black car on black tarmac. Yeah, I think it's a dive plane. I think it's a very small dive plane on that front corner. Now that will affect the handling of the car, not by much, but it's there for a reason and will have a subtly negative effect. So over the start-finish line comes the fight. John Curry trying to attack James Guess in the Aston Martin. That's compromised his exit coming out of Oulton corner and again allows his teammate in the second of the two Make Happen Racing Mercedes to begin to close in. Phil Carter's in the mix as well, and now that they're squabbling, it's just allowing Chris Murphy and the Group GTH leading McLaren Artour of Tim Docker to disappear up the road. So the fight for 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, all still not quite as one, but pretty close to each other as they head round through that section of the circuit. And for second and third place, Dan Dazil still doing a sterling job of keeping at bay Sasha Kakad. The Audi gets a good run this time though coming out of Druids. Is Dan Dazil going to let the Group GT3 car go through? No, he's not. You see the nose of the Ferrari dip. And he still hangs on to second overall in the race. And more importantly, the lead of Group GTC. This is not really what Sasha Kakad needs at the moment, because Simon Orange, leading the race overall, is going to stop for 4 seconds shorter than the third place Audi. So Sasha Kakad would desperately need to try and get through and past Dan Dazil and then see whether he can close the gap on Simon Orange and the McLaren, but he's just not being allowed that opportunity at the moment. We are heading towards 9 minutes into this race, which means it's about another 5 before the pit window will open. And you can see that Simon Orange in the lead of the race is now 13 seconds up the road, so really is pushing hard, the double former GT Cup champion. So it's McLaren, from Ferrari, from Audi, from Lamborghini at the moment. 4 different marques represented inside the top 4, using all of the curves but no more. Dan Dazil, nice to see him back racing, partnered up with his dad of course, Graham Dazil, who'll take over the car for part 2 of the race. Graham had a race win in that very car at Brands Hatch last weekend. Back to what's going on in Group GTH. Well, for 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th in Group GTH, they are still all together. The Aston Martin of James Guess, followed by now the number 69 Mercedes that sits behind. So we've had that change there. Stephen Walton has gone through and ahead of John Curry, his teammate, and now he's already starting to close in on the coattails of the Aston Martin. You can see there. Oh, right, well, that answers a question. Russ Lindsay is not going solo because Patrick Collins has got his crash helmet on. So that answers one of the questions. number 999, will have a change of driver. It's not Russ Lindsay going solo. And alongside him was Tom Roach, who is going to take over the race-leading number 67 McLaren before too much longer. So they are ready to go, but the clock is not quite there yet. Now, Chris Murphy has also gone through and ahead of Tim Docker. That could be important, because if he could pull away from that McLaren, the chasing pack behind, the likes of the Aston Martin, the two Mercedes, and then the McLaren 570S could begin to close in on the Artura. For the moment, Tim Docker still leads the way. But that car will remain stationary for 100 seconds, the number 78 McLaren in the pit lane. James Guess at the wheel of the number 82 Ferrari will remain stationary for 8 seconds shorter, and then, amazingly, 32 seconds shorter than that will be the two Mercedes. So they really are potentially in a strong position, you would think, but of course the gentleman drivers, the sporting drivers, the amateur drivers, whatever you wish to call them, are then going to be pitched up against the pros who will jump on board the other cars. So that's why they stop for a shorter period. And have we had the change for second as Hugo Cook gets ready to jump on board the Audi? Yes, we have. So Sasha Kakad, 15 seconds adrift, but he is now up into second place, and Dan Dazil is down into third, but still continues to lead Group GTC. That happened at Lodge at the start of the previous lap. Up towards Island Bend, and we've had a shuffle again, haven't we? James Guess, now at the wheel of the Aston Martin, has also been overtaken by the number 69 car, which I was told was going to be the same as was originally indicated for race 1. We had no starting driver identified for race 2, but I think it is. Again, just looking back through my notes, same as this morning, Stephen Walton to start, Chris Hart in second is the information I've received. So certainly the timing screen's also got Walton stroke Hart, and they usually put the correct driver that's in first. So Stephen Walton having a brilliant run if that's the case. And you can just see that little bit of dive plane damage to the front right-hand corner, which for the moment doesn't seem to be affecting the number 69 Mercedes. Phil Carter ran a little bit wide there, just coming out of Knickerbrook. Almost put the McLaren just beyond the white lines, I think, there. So that might be one of the track limit warnings he will pick up. The pit window will be opening in about a minute and a half's time, so 16 minutes to go is when the pit window will open. So certainly for these cars in Group GTH, for some of them where you've got a pro driver on board, they might be diving to the pit lane. Not on this lap, they can't do it, the window's not open, but by the time they come around next time it will be, that's for sure. So the teams are ready, the drivers are ready. There's Graham Dazil, you can see his crash helmet, ready to jump on board the Group GTC leading Ferrari that's in the hands of his son at the moment. And over the start-finish line comes our race leader. So this is now 8 laps completed by Simon Orange. Simon Orange and Tom Roach sit third in the Group GT3 championship standings. They're not in the top 6 of the championship overall because of the bad luck that they had at the opening weekend at Donington Park, where they only scored 10 points all weekend. Well, you think it's 25 for a win, and there's 4 races. So it just goes to show what a rotten start to the season they had. Since then they've continually been playing catch-up, but have been winners overall twice so far this season. James Guess is having to stick his elbows out there to try and keep John Curry at bay. John Curry has still got Phil Carter breathing down his neck. So this is for 11th, 12th and 13th places overall. Is the Aston Martin going to get undone here by the Mercedes that sits behind? No, he's not. But look in the background, the race leader is bearing down on them as well. So Simon Orange, I think, will catch them before the end of this lap, and with 3 cars to try and get through and past, Simon Orange, I think, would be wise to make sure he doesn't lose too much time working his way through the traffic, because he's built a 16, nearly a 17-second advantage. So if I were the race leader, I'd be on the pits now to the team and saying, look, I'm catching traffic here, I'm going to box at the end of this lap, and let's strap Tom Roach on board, because they've done some hard work, they're catching traffic, you know that's going to compromise them, as we now have almost a side-by-side battle for the lead of Group GTH. Tim Docker coming under pressure. Is he going to dive for the pit lane? Yes, he does. And right behind him goes Stephen Walton as well. So the front 2 cars in Group GTH head to the pit lane. James Guess comes in as well, as does Simon Orange, ready to hand over to Tom Roach. So he did do exactly what I thought here. Remember, that car will stop for 91 seconds come the driver change. It takes 14 seconds also to drive down the pit lane at the regulatory limit, so you'd add the amount of time that the car remains stationary to the success seconds, and then add 14 seconds, which is how long it takes to drive from one end of the pit lane to the other at the pit lane speed limit. That gives you a total time the car should be in the pits. If they're in there for any shorter than that, they've done one of two things. They've either exceeded the pit lane speed limit, or they've not stopped for the correct amount of time. But all of that is timed by our fantastic timekeepers, and any transgression of that is picked up on appropriately. About to jump into the McLaren now is Ed Peed, birthday boy from yesterday, taking over from Andre Borodin. But out on track, John Curry and Phil Carter still pushing hard. I'm surprised Phil Carter didn't come in, because he's got Mikey Broadhurst, the pro, they're going to strap on board that car. But for the moment, those two are busy squabbling away for what will be at the moment the lead of Group GTH, because the rest of the Group GTH field all dived its way into the pit lane on the end of that lap. And remember, there's only a single pit window here, so everybody comes in together. Paul Bailey comes in at the wheel of the Lamborghini in the background to hand over to former British GT champion, the Scotsman Ross Wiley, who's competing in the Porsche Carrera Cup this year. Now, I would imagine this time through, we're probably going to see John Curry and Phil Carter come in. Lights ablaze on the 570S McLaren, run by Greystone GT. The Make Happen Racing Mercedes lies ahead. Is John Curry going to stay out for a further lap, or is he going to head in? John Curry and Phil Carter both stay out, so they both remain out. The cars that were in the pit lane are then pushed backwards by the mechanics and make their way out on to the circuit. So Tom Roach now safely on board the number 67 McLaren, and should still pick up a reasonable lead by the time we've cycled through all of the pit stops, because at the moment this Ferrari has not stopped in the hands of Dan de Ziel, so it leads the way, but it will be destined for the pit lane, one would have thought, potentially by the end of this lap. Now, John Curry and Phil Carter are still busy squabbling away. Neither of these two cars have pitted just as yet. It's only these two, plus that Ferrari, that haven't pitted. Tom Roach now is trying to carve his way through the traffic. This car should, the number 67 Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren, pick up the lead of the race once we've cycled through the pit stops, but still work to do whilst you're heading through and past the slower Group GTH traffic. Also, the Aston Martin in the background is now a lap adrift of the two cars ahead of it, because the Aston Martin has been handed over by James Guest to pro factory Aston Martin driver Tom Canning. Chris Murphy, going solo in this race, has completed his pit stop, so the Woodrow Motorsport BMW makes its way back out of the pit lane. The Lamborghini in the background also about to rejoin the circuit. So we're at that stage of the race where most of the cars have pitted, but not all of them. We've still got 3 cars to come into the pit lane, and they need to be into the pit lane before the 19th minute of the race, so they can't stay out another lap. This Mercedes and then the number 14 McLaren have to come in this time through. If they stay out, I think they might go beyond the pit window, so no, sensibly, both Make Happen Racing Mercedes in the hands of John Curry and the Greystone GT McLaren in the hands of Phil Carter dive for the pit lane. So there is Mikey Broadhurst, ready to jump on board the Mercedes. Also into the pit lane comes Dan de Ziel, ready to hand the race-leading Ferrari over to his father, Graham de Ziel. And we've also got that other pit stop taking place, which is John Curry, who for this weekend is going solo at the wheel of the number 96 Make Happen Racing Mercedes. That's because his regular co-driver for this season, Phil Keane, is racing at Classic Le Mans this weekend. So Graham de Ziel jumps on board the car that's just been vacated by his son. We should see taking up quite a comfortable lead, this number 67 car. It's not leading just as yet, because it needs to get back over the start-finish line in the hands of Tom Roach, but Simon Orange had done a lot of hard work building an advantage before the pit stops, and that GT3 McLaren was going to stop shorter than the likes of Sasha Kakad's Audi when he was giving way to Hugo Cook. But the car that might come back into the mix is Charlotte Gilbert as well, at the wheel of the number 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini, because that car was only going to stop for 71 seconds. And I really want to try and understand where the 2 Make Happen Racing Mercedes are going to feed their way back out, because John Curry comes back out of the pit lane. Of course, that car only stopped for 60 seconds, so he should be in a reasonably strong position, one would have thought. Graham de Ziel trundling his way back down the pit lane with 10 minutes to go, but already through has gone Tom Roach, which means that McLaren will pick up the lead of the race and has just set the fastest lap of the race in the hands of Tom Roach. 1 minute 35.177 from the Welshman, so straight away, first flying lap on it. Fastest lap of the race. Brilliant stuff from the former Mazda MX-5 champion. So you can see just the body language of that McLaren at Tom Roach is wringing the neck of it. Recently became a father for the first time, and he will be hoping that he can bring home some silverware to the new family as he flicks his way left and right at the Britain chicane and left again on the exit of the corner with 9.5 minutes to go. Now, need to wait and see what's going on in Group GTH as well, because of course those two Mercedes from Make Happen Racing, the 96 of John Curry and the 69 of Stephen Walton and Chris Hart, both had to stop for shorter amounts of time than anybody else in the field. Patrick Collins has now taken over the number 999 Porsche. That only stopped for 67 seconds. That was the car that stopped for the second shortest amount of time of any of them. So this should also put that car in a reasonably strong position. It has moved up to, I think, 6th overall now. Yeah, 6th overall as it's come over the start-finish line. But it's going to take probably another full lap to absolutely sort itself out, because at the moment, still on an outlap is Graham DeZille. So it's still showing the Ferraris being in the lead of the race. But now over the start-finish line goes Tom Roach. Yeah, he has now picked up the lead of the race on circuit. So round through Island Bend goes Patrick Collins, the car that was started by Russ Lindsay. Russ Lindsay and Patrick Collins have been regulars in GT Cup for a good number of seasons now. Whether it be in the likes of Ginettas or the Porsche that they've got available to them this season. We saw them out in a McLaren last year as well. Charlotte Gilbert heads up towards Old Hall Corner. Now there's Mikey Broadhurst, and he's ahead of Jordan Albert's McLaren Artura there. So that, I think, is going to be for position. Yes, it is. That will be for 12th and 13th position in the race at the moment. Because the lead of Group GTH has gone the number 69 Make Happen Racing Mercedes, because it did have to stop for a shorter period of time. So the Stephen Walton and Chris Hart shared car leads Group GTH at the moment. And the two McLarens, the 570S in the hands of Mikey Broadhurst, which is being hunted down by the newer McLaren Artura that sits behind in the hands of Tim Docker. Sorry, in the hands of Jordan Albert now, is looking to try and close in. But of course, only just having completed an outlap is the number 14 car of Mikey Broadhurst, because it stopped that little bit later. So the older McLaren ahead of the newer McLaren, the Artura, making its debut in the GT Cup Championship this weekend. It was a car that was newly launched by McLaren for the 2023 Championship season. And it's another McLaren at lead. So here comes Tom Roach over the start-finish line, a 16-second lead between himself and Hugo Cook in second place. But Hugo, last time through, set the fastest lap of the race we've seen so far. 1 minute 34.673 seconds for Hugo Cook. So the Audi quicker than the McLaren, but it's a huge advantage that the McLaren has got with only 7 minutes now to go in this subtly reduced race. And Hugo Cook has also got traffic to deal with as well as he closes in onto the coattails of the Chris Murphy driven BMW. There's confirmation of that new fastest lap. Meets the Beamer in the right space, in the right spot, should be able to squeeze his way through down the straight. So maybe a little bit of time lost, but not a great deal for Hugo Cook. This is the car that won the shortened race earlier on. You can see it squirming around on acceleration there in the hands of Hugo Cook as he was trying to get the throttle down as quickly as he possibly could. The Audi reminding him very quickly that you've reached the limit now. It's good to see the car being driven as hard as he possibly can. Again, more traffic to deal with. It's the Make Happen Racing Mercedes that is next up in the hands of John Curry. It's very difficult to tell the two Make Happen Racing Mercedes apart from each other, but the easiest way is you look at the front of them, and if it's got silver edges to the front wings, it's John Curry's car. If it's got yellow edges to the front wings, it's going to be the number 69 car of Stephen Walton and Chris Hart. So another car safely dealt with. Through Druitt goes the chasing car in second place, but 14 3/4 seconds is going to be a heck of a lot to make up over the course of the next 5.5 minutes. So, but you never know when you're a racing driver. You push as hard as you possibly can. You just don't know. You know, is the car ahead going to have a problem? Might it run wide? Might it continually meet traffic in the wrong place? You simply do not know. Tom Canning, he is running third in Group GTH at the moment with the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. That's the car that relies second overall in the championship standings. It's got the car that's fourth overall in the championship standings coming into this weekend behind it, which is the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini that was scheduled to be driven solo by Charlotte Gilbert in this race. I do wonder whether there might, for some teams, have been a subtle change, because it did mean that Morgan Short didn't get much racing in the aborted first race, but it does look as though that car was scheduled to be driven solo by Charlotte Birch. And also confirmation there that there is going to be a drive-through penalty for car number 14, so Philip Carter and Michael Broadhurst, some sort of transgression in the pit stops, a short pit stop for them, so that is why they are back into the pit lane very shortly. You've got that minimum period of time where you needed to be stationary, which was 96 seconds for the pair of them, so it was 85 seconds because it's a Pro-Am combination, or a Pro Sporting combination as it's called in GT Cup, plus 11 success seconds because they finished second in Group GTH earlier on today in the slightly shortened race, so it should be 96 in total. They've clearly stopped for a shorter period of time, or they've sped in the pit lane, one or the other. So 4 minutes to go. Mikey Broadhurst still pushing hard. You'll see him racing not just GT4 McLarens but GT4 Mercedes as well. He's been competing in the UK this year, whilst leading Group GTH is still the number 69 Mercedes at this stage, heading towards us now. You see those yellow edges to the front wings, nose dips, turns its way in towards Old Hall Corner. Now, so many times this year we have seen some great runs from Stephen Walton and Chris Hart, but they've only picked up 2 overall wins in Group GTH so far this year, and that's largely because they've had the pace, but the pro drivers jump in for the second part of the race and catch what are just 2 gentleman drivers, 2 sporting drivers. Well, here at Oulton Park, we've got a few less entries this weekend, and they have had problems in the first race, which has given them very little amount of time that they need to remain stationary in the pit lane, the minimum amount of time that anybody in this championship could remain stationary. As into the pit lane comes Mikey Broadhurst to serve the stop, and there's the go, and he rejoins the race. So penalty being served by the Greystone GT McLaren 570S, and that is going to drop them now to the tail end of the field, I'm afraid. So just over 2.5 minutes to go. The lead advantage is nearly 15 seconds. It's not for want of trying, because Hugo Cook through the middle part of this lap has just gone quicker than anybody has gone so far. And we've also just seen a purple final sector come in for Ross Wiley, who's trying hard at the wheel of the black and day-glow yellow Lamborghini. Scotsman potentially on for a very quick lap this time through. Now Charlotte Gilbert at the wheel of the Group GTC Lamborghini. She is second in the group at the moment, has got Ed Peed bearing down on her at the wheel of a Group GT3 car. That's the car that was driven by Andre Borodin in the early stages of the race. Charlotte Gilbert is not really going to want to let that car through, because she'll be fully focused on trying to catch the Ferrari ahead, which is the Group GTC leading car of Graham Dazil. So she's not going to make it easy for Ed Peed in the McLaren, because she wants to sound the coattails of the Ferrari, because Ferrari and Lamborghini fighting over the lead of the category at this stage. So they start to head over the crest of Deerleet and up towards Old Hall Corner. Is Ed Peed going to try anything at Old Hall? No, not at all. So Ferrari from Lamborghini from McLaren, and as they head along the avenue again, Ed Peed is right on the gearbox, isn't he, of that Lamborghini, with 1.5 minutes just under to go now. Now Ed Peed out of this corner might be the best opportunity for the McLaren to try and squeeze its way through, but again, the Lamborghini, which runs to Super Trofeo specification, it means that it's quite slippery in a straight line. It doesn't have the aerodynamics of the GT3 car, but it's a more powerful car. It doesn't have the aero, which means in a straight line it's a bit of a rocket ship really. Charlotte Gilbert is utilising all of that power to try and hang on to the Ferrari that lies ahead. What was the gap between Ferrari and Lamborghini last time through? It came down by some 1.4 seconds. However, there's more traffic just up the road, and this is the car that they're going to lap. This is Chris Murphy's Group GTO BMW that they're about to lap. Simon Orange is about to now already be on his last lap of the race, so he's heading up towards Island Bend. Through the left-hander at Island goes our race leader. What's going on with Chris Murphy and the chasing pack behind? They're going to meet the BMW just as they head round through Druids, and that's a real good opportunity for the Lamborghini to try and get a good run on the Ferrari whilst they lap BMW at the same time. Chris Murphy doesn't buy into it, he stays out of the way. It's going to let the squabble go through. So nose to tail for the lead of Group GTC. And Graham Desile made a bit of a hash of that there, I'm afraid. Just, I think, lost a little bit of concentration, didn't quite grab the apex, and through goes the Lamborghini to pick up the place and pick up the lead of Group GTC. And following through, and also squeezing through, goes Ed Peed. So Graham Desile, it wasn't a big mistake, it was just a slight, small mistake whilst he weaved his way past the BMW, but that was all it needed. So the Lamborghini goes through and picks up the lead of Group GTC. And that also now means that that car is back up into the overall podium spot, so back up to third place overall. For the final time, clock has ticked to 0. Tom Roach turns his way through Lodge Corner and is about to chalk up another win for himself and Simon Orange. So through over the start-finish line now come. That is now their 4th group win of the season. It is their 3rd overall win of the season, and they'll be pleased. They've had to be very patient and wait for a full race distance here today, albeit slightly shortened one. Sasha Kakag and Hugo Cook's Audi finishes in 2nd position overall. And who's going to finish in 3rd? Is it going to be the Lamborghini? Is it going to be Ed Peed at the wheel of the McLaren? We'll have to wait and see. We have not seen Andre Borodin and Ed Peed on the overall podium so far this season. Neither have we seen Charlotte Gilbert in that Lamborghini on the podium, whether it be with either Morgan Short, who she's been sharing with today, or Gilbert Yates, or Warren Gilbert, her husband. It'll be a good result for them in what is a slightly smaller entry list, and again trying to be defensive, but I think Ed Peed, is he going to unlock the door heading up towards Lodge? He might make it through. Yes, he does. The Greystone McLaren goes through, and Charlotte Gilbert now needs to watch out because she's got the Ferrari of Graham Desile closing in on her. They're going to be nose to tail over the start-finish line, and I think it is just going to be, Charlotte Gilbert in the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini that finishes in 4th place and takes the win in Group GTC by a 1/10 of a second in the end from Graham Desile, who almost had the opportunity to steal the group win on the run to the flag. Ross Wiley comes over the start-finish line and is going to be classified in 6th place overall. That's a Group GTO winning car. And we've also just seen through Jordan Albert at the wheel of the McLaren Artura for this weekend. Only one more car to take the checkered flag, and that is going to be the Phil Carter and Mighty Key Broadhurst McLaren, which of course had to serve that stop-go penalty for its pit stop being too short, and that now also takes the checkered flag. So for Simon Orange and Tom Roach, that gives them good momentum once more. They won 2 of the 4 races at Snetterton last time out. Well, we've only really had 1 full race here today because of that shortened race earlier on, but the results were issued still for that shortened race. They finished 2nd earlier on today, albeit only 2 laps of racing were completed before the red flag, but they do win here. What will be their 3rd overall win of the championship season. So let's confirm the results for you then for our 2nd and final race here at Oulton Park for the GT Cup Championship 2023. It's a win for Simon Orange and Tom Roach with their McLaren. It was the Audi of Hugo Cook and Sasha Kakad that finished in 2nd. An overall podium and 3rd place for Andre Borodin and Ed Peed, with Charlotte Gilbert partnered up with Morgan Short over the course of this weekend, finishing 4th and securing top honours in Group GTC ahead of Dan and Graham Desile. Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley came through to finish in 6th place. That's the win in Group GTO, with Patrick Collins and Russ Lindsay in 7th place. And it was Stephen Walton and Chris Hart that claimed victory for the 3rd time this season in 8th place overall, but that's the win in Group GTH. They'll be pleased with that. Their teammate John Curry was 9th. Chris Murphy in the BMW completed the top 10. Then as we move outside of the top 10, James Guess and Tom Canning finished in 11th position. Tim Docker and Jordan Albert making their debut in the McLaren Artura in the championship, finish in 12th place. And Philip Carter and Mikey Broadhurst were the last of the finishers home following that drive-through penalty in 13th position.